King Charles stunned the entire United Kingdom with an emergency address over Princess Diana's hidden inheritance. And before the king had finished his first trembling sentence, it was clear that what Diana left behind could change everything. Seated alone inside Buckingham Palace, Britain's monarch placed one hand beside Diana's photograph and the other over a sealed legal codicil carrying her signature. Prince William, the future king, watched from behind closed doors, struggling to control the pain in his face, while Prince Harry remained frozen on a private screen thousands of miles away. For nearly 3 decades, the two brothers believed they understood their mother's final wishes, but one missing document now suggested that Diana had entrusted them with something far greater than money, something powerful enough to reunite them or divide them forever. Charles had called the emergency address to reveal the truth, but just before naming the person who had kept Diana's inheritance hidden, he stopped, looked directly into the camera, and unfolded a second letter. What exactly had Diana left to William and Harry? Who suppressed her final instruction? And why did King Charles believe revealing it now would change the monarchy forever? At precisely 7:45 on Tuesday evening, every major British broadcaster interrupted its scheduled program with the same sentence. King Charles would address the nation from Buckingham Palace in 15 minutes. There had been no ceremony, no advance briefing, and no explanation. But when the king appeared beside a framed photograph of Diana, Princess of Wales, the entire United Kingdom understood that this was not an ordinary royal announcement. Hours earlier, Charles had been preparing to leave Windsor Castle when his private secretary, Sir Alistair Pembroke, entered carrying a narrow blue document case recovered from a retired palace solicitor's vault. Its brass lock bore 3 engraved initials: DFS, Diana Frances Spencer. "Where did this come from?" Charles asked. "From the estate of Benedict Harcourt," Alistair replied. "He left instructions that it must reach you personally if his former partner died." The king stopped fastening his cuff. Benedict had advised senior royal households during the final years of Charles and Diana's marriage. He had also disappeared from palace service shortly after Diana's death, officially because of ill health. Yet Charles remembered one disturbing detail. Benedict had once requested a private meeting concerning unfinished instructions from the princess. That meeting had been cancelled by the palace secretariat. Inside the case lay a sealed legal codicil dated February 1997, witnessed by 2 solicitors and accompanied by an authentication report. It did not replace Diana's will or remove anything already given to William and Harry. Instead, it governed something more sensitive: the future use of her private letters, recorded memories, personal symbols, charitable archives, and name. The codicil granted equal authority to both sons. Neither William nor Harry could sell, license, publish, dramatize, or permanently transfer any protected part of Diana's legacy without the other's written consent. If they disagreed, an independent trustee, not the monarch, the palace, or either household, would preserve the material until agreement became possible. Charles read the final paragraph twice. "My sons were meant to protect her together," he whispered. But beneath the codicil was a memorandum bearing an old Buckingham Palace reference number. Someone inside the royal administration had received the document in August 1997, entered it into a confidential register, and then marked it inactive. The signature authorizing that decision had been cut from the page. William arrived first, composed in appearance but pale around the eyes. Harry joined through an encrypted video connection from California. Neither brother spoke when Charles explained what had been found. Then William noticed the missing corner. Who removed the signature? Alistair placed a second envelope on the desk. "We believe the answer is inside this." Before Charles could open it, his communications secretary rushed into the room. A reporter had learned that an undisclosed Diana document existed. Publication was less than an hour away. Charles looked from William to Harry's frozen face on the screen. Silence had divided this family for decades. Now another silence was about to become a national scandal. "Prepare the broadcast room," the king ordered. "Tonight, I will tell them myself." The second envelope looked deceptively ordinary, but the red wax pressed across its flap carried the faded impression of the royal archives. Charles recognized it immediately. Documents sealed that way were not personal correspondence. They were records someone had intended the institution itself to remember. William stood opposite his father beneath a portrait worth more than most London homes. As Prince of Wales, he controlled the Duchy of Cornwall, a vast private estate supporting his public duties. Yet no inheritance had ever mattered to him like the pages lying between them. Harry watched from his California home, where polished glass doors opened toward a darkening garden. Distance had given him freedom and wealth, but tonight it made him look powerless. "Open it," Harry said. Charles broke the wax. Inside was a typed memorandum, dated 2nd of September 1997. It confirmed that Benedict Harcourt had delivered Diana's codicil to the palace legal office 5 days after her death. Because William and Harry were minors, the document was supposed to be lodged with the independent trustees managing their mother's estate. Instead, a senior official ordered it removed from the succession files pending institutional review. The official's name was still absent, but one handwritten sentence remained in the margin. "Joint control between the princes may create future instability." William's expression hardened. They were children, and someone was already afraid of what they might do together. Harry leaned closer to his screen. "Or afraid of what Mother wanted us to protect." The accusation reopened an older wound. William remembered walking behind Diana's coffin at 15, watched by millions, while every instinct told him to turn away. Harry had been 12, small enough to seem swallowed by his black suit. Afterward, adults speaking in careful voices had explained trusts, executors, jewelry, and personal effects. No one had mentioned authority over Diana's private archive. Charles lowered his eyes. He had possessed palaces, ceremonial treasures, and privileges beyond ordinary imagination, but he could not purchase a gentler memory of those days. "I should have asked more questions," he said. "You were the Prince of Wales," Harry replied. "Who could have stopped you? The same machine that convinced me silence was protection." William looked toward the window. For years he had defended stability because instability had shaped his childhood. Harry had challenged the institution because he believed that same stability demanded human sacrifice. Diana's codicil had joined them legally, but emotionally they remained on opposite shores. Alistair removed a final sheet from the envelope. It contained 3 archival access dates: 2002, 2005, and 2017. Someone had secretly reopened the suppressed file long after both princes became adults. Beside the 2017 entry were the initials ER. Charles stared at them. William knew the retired courtier they appeared to identify. Harry did too. "No," Charles murmured. "He served my mother for 40 years. At that moment, the secure telephone rang. Alistair answered, listened, then covered the receiver. "The reporter has the initials," he said, "and he is naming Lord Edmund Rothmere." Lord Edmund Rothmere had spent 4 decades moving through royal corridors with the quiet authority of a man who never needed to raise his voice. He owned a Georgian estate in Wiltshire, held no elected office, and appeared in no public chain of command. Yet 3 monarchs had trusted his judgment. Newspapers called him discreet. Former aides called him untouchable. Now his initials threatened to turn him into the face of the greatest deliberate palace concealment in a generation. "Delay the address," William said. "We cannot accuse a man from 2 letters." Harry's response came sharply through the screen. "And if the palace delays again, the headline becomes another cover-up." Charles remained between them, still holding the memorandum. Their disagreement sounded painfully familiar. William protected process. Harry feared process was simply secrecy, wearing a respectable suit. The doors opened, and Catherine entered carrying a slim folder. She had left a reception at Clarence's house after William's urgent message. Her sapphire earrings and tailored evening dress reflected her position beside the future king. But she crossed the room without ceremony and placed one steadying hand against William's back. "I asked the archivist to compare the handwriting," she said. The initials were added in black fountain ink. The access dates were recorded in blue. Alistair opened her folder. A preliminary microscopic analysis showed that the black ink was manufactured after 2019, 2 years after the final listed access. Harry sat forward. "Then somebody planted Rothmere's initials, or labeled the page later," William cautioned. Catherine turned to Charles. "Either way, naming him tonight would be reckless." The king studied her. Catherine possessed jewels, residences, and rank. Yet her real influence came from knowing when silence calmed a room, and when it merely protected fear. Diana had once entered this family as a young woman overwhelmed by its machinery. Catherine had survived by studying that machinery before allowing it to define her. The contrast was unspoken, but everyone felt it. A palace messenger arrived, with a handwritten reply from Rothmere's solicitor. The retired courtier, now 89 and recovering from surgery, denied suppressing the codicil. He admitted opening the file in 2002 and 2005, but claimed he had been searching for the missing authorization page. Then came the sentence that changed the room. Lord Rothmere possesses a contemporaneous diary, naming the official who issued the original instruction. "Where is the diary?" Charles asked. "At his estate," Alistair replied. "His granddaughter is bringing it." A producer called from the broadcast room. 10 minutes remained. Charles walked toward Diana's photograph, remembering the years when their marriage had become a public battlefield. He had once believed preserving the institution required both of them to surrender private truths. Now that belief had returned like a debt. William approached him. "You can acknowledge the codicil without naming anyone, and leave the ugliest part hidden?" Harry asked. Before Charles could answer, every secure telephone in the room vibrated simultaneously. The reporter had published. The headline did not accuse Rothmere. The article spread across Britain within seconds. Its headline claimed that Charles, then Prince of Wales, had personally ordered Diana's codicil buried to prevent his sons from controlling material that might embarrass the monarchy. Beneath it appeared a photographed note carrying the phrase, "At the request of His Royal Highness." Harry read the words aloud. His voice lost its anger and became quiet. "Did you request it?" William turned toward his father. Catherine's hand slipped from William's back. Not in rejection, but because some questions had to stand without comfort. Charles studied the photograph. The paper came from his private office. The typeface, date stamp, and routing code looked authentic. "I never saw the codicil," he said, "but I may know how this began." The room fell silent. A memory returned from September 1997. Fresh flowers covering palace gates, 2 grieving boys hidden behind guarded windows, and courtiers terrified that any private paper belonging to Diana might be sold. Charles had summoned his deputy private secretary, Sir Malcolm Wren, and issued a narrow instruction. "Secure her personal recordings until the boys are old enough to decide," Charles recalled saying. "Nothing is to disappear." Malcolm had inclined his head. "And documents affecting the institution? Preserve them. Protect the children." Charles had believed those words were clear. Yet Malcolm was a severe traditionalist who treated uncertainty as danger and openness as surrender. For years he had managed crises from offices furnished with antiques and guarded by silence. He considered Diana's influence unpredictable, Harry impulsive, and William too emotionally bound to his mother to make what Malcolm called detached constitutional decisions. You gave him discretion, William said. I gave him responsibility, Charles replied. I failed to ask what he did with it. Harry looked away. That distinction may matter in court. It did not give us our mother's wishes. The sentence struck harder than the published accusation. Outside the palace, camera crews crowded the gates. Broadcasters displayed photographs of Diana beside images of Charles. Public sympathy, suspicion, and old grief rose together. The inheritance was no longer a private legal problem. It had reopened Britain's most painful royal memory. Headlights swept across the courtyard. Rothmere's granddaughter had arrived with the diary. Alistair carried it inside and opened the entry dated 20 September 1997. Rothmere had written that Malcolm Wren presented Charles's protective instruction as authority to deactivate the codicil permanently. Rothmere objected. Malcolm answered that the brothers must never possess a weaponized version of their mother. Catherine's face tightened. He turned protection into control. A producer appeared at the door. Your Majesty, we are live in 90 seconds. Charles looked at William, then at Harry. If I speak, I cannot repair what happened. No, William said, but you can stop it happening again. Harry remained silent. Charles entered the broadcast room and sat beside Diana's photograph. A red light awakened above the camera. Across the United Kingdom, millions waited. Then Charles unfolded his prepared statement, set it aside, and began speaking without it. Tonight, I speak not only as your king, but as a father who failed to ask whether silence was protecting his children or protecting an institution from discomfort. Across Britain, conversations stopped. Charles explained that an authenticated codicil belonging to Diana, Princess of Wales, had been recovered. He separated it from the financial will. The document, he said, concerned her private letters, recordings, charitable archives, the future use of her name. My sons were intended to hold equal authority over that legacy, he continued. That instruction was not presented to them. He did not accuse Malcolm Wren. He did not hide behind him either. An instruction issued from my household to preserve sensitive material was expanded beyond its proper purpose. Whether through fear, misplaced loyalty, or institutional arrogance, the result was the same. The wishes of their mother were withheld from Prince William and Prince Harry. Inside the adjoining room, William stood rigid beside Catherine. Harry watched from California, with one hand covering his mouth. Neither had expected Charles to say Diana's name so plainly, nor to describe the failure without blaming public pressure, lawyers, or the passage of time. The king made the announcement that stunned the entire United Kingdom and changed everything. Effective tonight, the royal household renounces any claim to direct, license, or commercially approve the protected Diana archive. Subject to independent legal confirmation, that authority belongs jointly to her sons, exactly as she intended. For William, the words carried duty rather than victory. He understood what joint authority meant. Every decision concerning Diana's protected legacy would require communication with the brother he barely trusted. For Harry, it meant the palace had recognized a voice he believed it had spent years diminishing. Yet it also denied him unilateral control. Charles announced an independent review led by retired judges and estate specialists. Every relevant archive would be preserved. No document could be destroyed, transferred, or published while the review continued. Then his voice weakened. I cannot return the years my sons lost. I can only refuse to let another year be taken. Catherine lowered her eyes. William's anger remained, but beneath it moved something more fragile. The memory of a father who had also stood behind Diana's coffin, carrying grief he had never learned to express. In California, Harry removed his glasses and wiped his face. The address ended without music. Outside Buckingham Palace, the crowd remained quiet before scattered applause began. Millions repeated one sentence, exactly as she intended. But in a secluded house near the Scottish border, Sir Malcolm Wren was watching. Biographies described him as retired overseas. In reality, he lived under protection, surrounded by locked cabinets and decades of royal correspondence. He switched off the television and telephoned an unlisted number. "Charles has recognized the codicil," Malcolm said. "Rothmere's diary reached them." A woman answered. "Then it is over." "No," Malcolm replied, opening a safe. Inside rested an audio cassette labeled, "For William and Harry." They still do not know why Diana created it. The emergency address had barely ended when the woman on Malcolm's telephone made a decision he did not expect. Her name was Eleanor Wren, his daughter and an assistant conservator at the Royal Archives. She had spent her childhood inside estates, where servants knew which doors never opened. Her father's salary had been comfortable, but his true wealth was access, correspondence, protected secrets, and the gratitude of powerful families. Eleanor had admired his discipline. Now she heard fear beneath it. "You told me every Diana document was returned," she said. "Everything dangerous was contained." "That is not what I asked." Malcolm ended the call. Eleanor contacted the independent trustee named in Diana's codicil. Within 20 minutes, Alistair's telephone rang. The cassette existed, Eleanor reported, inside Malcolm's Scottish house. She could identify the safe, but legal officers required authorization from both beneficiaries before entering or removing anything. The first test of Diana's joint authority had arrived sooner than anyone imagined. William signed the warrant request immediately. Harry hesitated. "If officials seize it," he said, "the palace controls the chain of custody." "No," William replied. "The independent trustee does. That trustee was chosen 29 years ago, and Mother chose him." The words halted them. Their disagreement was not about procedure. It was about whether either brother could trust a system that had failed them or trust the other to watch it. Catherine spoke. "Your mother anticipated disagreement. That is why she required both signatures and an independent hand." Harry looked at William. "No copies for the palace." "Agreed. No public release until we hear it together." William paused, then signed the condition. Together. At dawn, Eleanor admitted 2 officers and the trustee's solicitor into Malcolm's house. They found him seated beside the open safe, the cassette resting on his palm. "You mistake concealment for cruelty," Malcolm told his daughter. "I prevented their mother from becoming a permanent industry. You denied her sons the choice. They were surrounded by people who would monetize grief." Eleanor's eyes filled. "Then you should have trusted the safeguards she created." For the first time, Malcolm had no answer. The cassette was sealed, photographed, and transported to a forensic audio laboratory. Specialists confirmed that its casing, magnetic tape, and handwritten label were consistent with 1997. Voice comparison produced a strong match to Diana, but the trustee warned that authentication would require testing. That evening, William and Catherine entered a secure listening room at Windsor. Charles remained outside because the recording belonged to his sons. Harry appeared on an encrypted screen wearing headphones. For once, neither brother argued about who should press play. William reached forward. Static filled the room. A chair scraped. Then a woman breathed close to the microphone. "My darling William and Harry," Diana's voice began, soft but unmistakable. "If you are hearing this, someone has failed to give you my codicil." William's hand froze above the machine. The recording continued. "And if that happened, the person responsible will tell you it was done to protect you." Diana's recorded voice continued through the static. "Protection without choice is another kind of prison. You may be young when I write this, but one day people will ask you to approve books, films, exhibitions, and causes in my name. Some will love me. Some will profit from me. Many will claim to know what I wanted." William closed his eyes. Harry did not move. "I have therefore left equal authority to you both. Not because I expect you always to agree, but because I never want one of you carrying my memory alone. If one says no, wait. If both say yes, proceed. Speak to each other before allowing anyone else to speak for me." The purpose of the codicil became clear. Diana had not created a weapon against Charles or the monarchy. She had built a lock requiring 2 keys, knowing her sons might grow into different men surrounded by competing loyalties. The archive was valuable, but the deeper inheritance was obligation. Neither brother could possess their mother without acknowledging the other. Harry removed his headphones. She knew. Knew what? William asked. That people would pull us apart by telling each of us we were protecting her. William looked toward Catherine. For years, he had treated restraint as loyalty to Diana. Harry had treated public resistance as loyalty to her. Each believed the other's choices endangered their mother's dignity. "I thought you wanted to control the story," William said. "I thought you had already surrendered it." Neither apology came easily. Their lives had been shaped by titles, security teams, inherited fortunes, and attention. Yet in that room they were 2 sons, discovering that their mother had anticipated their loneliness. William leaned toward the microphone. "I should have called you more." Harry swallowed. "I should have answered without preparing for a fight." The tape clicked, then resumed. "There is one final message," Diana said. "It is for your father. You are not required to share it. That choice must be your first decision together." Charles waited beyond the door, unaware that his name had been spoken. William's instinct was to protect the recording. Harry's was to confront the past immediately. They stared at one another, both recognizing the divide. Then Harry said, "No palace copy. He hears it here." William nodded. "With us present." For the second time that day, they agreed. Catherine opened the door. Charles entered without his jacket or composure. He sat opposite the machine, looking older than he had during the broadcast. William pressed play. "Charles," Diana's voice began, "if the boys have allowed you to hear this, then they have done something we too often failed to do. They have chosen trust over fear." Charles lowered his head. "I do not ask them to defend me against you," the recording continued. "And I do not ask you to defend the crown against me. I ask only that our sons never inherit our war." The tape stopped abruptly, but the reel had not reached its end. A forensic specialist examined the cassette. The tape had caught against an old repair splice, made when Diana recorded over an earlier message. Nothing had been erased. After 20 minutes, the specialist reset the reel. Diana's voice emerged. "If you remember nothing else, remember this. Your inheritance is not my image. It is the freedom to decide what my life should mean. Use it to help people who feel unseen. And when you disagree, do not let strangers become more familiar with your hearts than you are with each other." The recording ended with a faint breath and the click of a button. Charles wept. William sat beside him, unable to offer instant forgiveness, but unwilling to leave. Harry remained silent until Charles looked up. "I am sorry," the king said, "not only for Malcolm's decision, for creating a household where he believed such a decision would please me." Harry nodded. "That is the first explanation I can believe. It was not reconciliation, it was a door unlocked." The independent review lasted 12 weeks. Handwriting reports, Rothmere's diary, records, and Eleanor's testimony established that Malcolm had deliberately reclassified the codicil. He admitted believing that joint control would weaken royal authority. No evidence showed Charles had seen the document, but the review criticized his household for valuing secrecy over the rights of 2 bereaved children. Malcolm lost his honorary palace position and surrendered every Diana-related record. Eleanor helped archivists identify material he had hidden. She did not excuse her father, but neither did she allow the institution to make him its only scapegoat. Charles approved a rule requiring protected family documents to be registered with independent trustees. No courtier could deactivate a beneficiary's legal instruction without judicial review. It was a quiet reform, born from a loud failure. William and Harry then announced their first joint decision. Diana's private recordings would remain sealed. Selected letters concerning humanitarian work would be preserved by an independent foundation. Any authorized income would support children experiencing bereavement, homelessness, and social isolation. Neither brother could act alone. 3 months after the emergency address, Harry returned to Britain without cameras. William met him at Althorpe, where their mother rested beyond the lake. They walked past the house and across the grounds in silence. They possessed wealth, titles, and influence beyond ordinary life. Yet beside Diana's grave, they carried only the poverty of lost time. Harry stopped. "She left us a lock with 2 keys. William looked across the water. Perhaps she knew we would lose each other. Perhaps she believed we could come back." William extended his hand. Harry stared at it, then pulled his brother into an embrace neither had planned. The inheritance did not erase betrayal, repair every wound, or reunite the family. It changed something important. Who controlled Diana's legacy, how the monarchy handled hidden truth, and whether 2 brothers could choose each other. From the palace, Charles faced no cameras and issued no statement. For once, silence was not concealment. It was peace.